it's Adam from Edge. We are here on the Edge stage at MMS 2011 in Las Vegas. I'm here with Brad Anderton. How are you doing, Brad?
I'm doing great.
I almost called you Brad. That whole
People have to watch the day one keynote to get that joke.
Which is coming up soon. First thing I want to do is congratulate you. When I looked at the product announcements that you guys have made this week and what you guys are doing over the next year, you guys got to be one of the busiest teams in Microsoft.
Well, it's remarkable what the teams have been doing. If you take a look at the entire portfolio of what System Center is and the desktop optimization pack, literally every one of the products in there is getting a significant update during this calendar year. In my time in the industry, I've never worked with a team that has had so much coming out, so concentrated in one area at one time. I think it's a testament, number one, to just the passion and the desire of the team, but also just the execution capabilities that the team has built. I mean, the team is delivering what they said they were going to deliver when they said they were going to deliver it.
Yeah. Is there, I know it's like picking a favorite child, are there any of the particular product announcements that you're particularly excited about?
Wow, obviously I think today is a very historic day from the standpoint of what we think about desktop management and protection going forward with the announcement of Windows Intune. I just think about where the path of the future heads to and delivering that service from the cloud. It's the first of its kind. I mean, it really is. And so you think about where that's going to lead in the next 4 to 5 years. And I think we'll look back, 4 or 5 years from now on today and go, wow, it was pretty amazing to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I think, a couple of things that we announced yesterday, one being this Project Conchero, this self-service portal that allows, IT organizations to delegate significant control of a private cloud to the organization, whether it be dev, test, or the business unit on how they want to consume a cloud. That's pretty darn cool, and it's a beautiful Silverlight application. Yep. And then we announced this thing called System Center Advisor, and that ability to get a continuous evaluation of your configurations being fed by knowledge and wisdom coming in from Microsoft, from support, and from consulting services. That's a remarkable solution.
Yeah. So talk to me, you mentioned Conchero a little bit and what's happening in the private cloud. We talked back in November in Berlin. Kind of give me an update. What's happening in the private cloud over the last few months? How's the story changed or developed and a little more since then?
Well, yesterday I think the two most significant announcements that we made with respect to the private cloud was the beta of the new version of Virtual Machine Manager, which is a part of the System Center 2012 wave, and then the Project Conchero. And so with that, significantly we advanced our capabilities and what we can deliver in a private cloud. So the ability to take the diversity that most organizations have in their data center, create a fabric, then create clouds, delegate authority and capabilities within that cloud, deploy applications in the clouds and separate the application from the operating system with things like server app v or application virtualization, put the SLA on that, and then have that all administered, if you will, in a way that allows IT to delegate control to their users, if you will. And their users in this case is not a traditional end user, but it's like development or a business unit owner. It's the individuals who own the service. That story is not something we were able to articulate at that level of detail in Berlin because we didn't have the technology out. Right. And yesterday, all that went into beta. It's all available. And I think that's a remarkable, advancement in terms of our capabilities.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit more about this notion of thinking about the apps versus the servers, because that's a little bit of a paradigm shift from maybe what we're used to.
Well, from a Microsoft perspective, and I think we've always thought it's about the apps. I would say, VMware has no idea what an app is, and so to them it's all a virtual machine, and what happens in that virtual machine is just a black box. And so you think about it, why do we deploy servers? Why do we deploy infrastructures? Well, it's to get an application or service to make users productive. And so the point that I really tried to make yesterday, which looking at what's happened from the tweets and those types of things, definitely resonated, was the reason we deploy services and the reason we deploy private clouds is to host applications or services. And Microsoft is very unique in what we can deliver in a private cloud, in that we bring wisdom to that private cloud in many, many different ways. Creating a cloud, creating a fabric, you could say that's going to be a commodity in the future. And as I kind of roll forward into what the future looks like, knowledge is what's going to differentiate one cloud from another, one vendor from another, one company from another, and how they use that knowledge. And so the assets, for example, that come through Operations Manager and the knowledge that comes now through System Center Advisor truly delivers wisdom and knowledge into the private cloud that allows IT to be a lot more productive, a lot more efficient. And that is truly a unique differentiator for Microsoft.
Yeah, you talked about it as empowering the IT org, right?
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. One of the things that we've heard resoundingly as we get out and talk with these teams that build the infrastructure is the cloud scares them. So I hear pretty frequently that what I see is a development team or maybe some business unit has decided to go around IT and they've gone to Amazon or they've gone to Azure and they're using a public cloud resource. And the infrastructure people kind of feel disempowered or kind of feel like there's been an end around on them.
Yeah, and we've heard the same thing. Developers love the cloud because they can go around IT, which has traditionally blocked them from or slowed their process of getting stuff out.
So I think the question to ask is, why do they do that?
Yeah.
And organizations like developers or business units, what they're looking for is a very simple solution. Something that gives them a predictable usage-based cost. They want to have a self-service interface. It just needs to be simple. It needs to be fast. It needs to be agile. And if IT doesn't deliver that, they will go around them.
Yeah. So how do we get IT back in that game?
Yeah. So with this System Center 2012, we give all the tools to the infrastructure people. Let's call them service creators.
Okay.
The ones who actually go out and create the cloud and then delegate responsibility of that cloud. We give them all the tools to do that. Okay. But then we also give them the capability to delegate responsibility or delegate authority, delegate actions to the individuals or the teams that are going to consume the cloud. That could be development. That could be a business unit. And they can decide what rights they want to give to those individuals, to those teams. And then they give them the Project Conchero, which is a self-service portal in the web browser with a Silverlight. And those teams can do whatever they want to within the constraints that IT has set up for them. But that allows IT to deliver to their consumers what they're looking for. And then there's no reason for them to go around them.
Perfect. You use the word consumer, so I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about this concept of consumerization of IT.
Yeah.
This idea that, like when I look at my kids, they've had a phone that they could get on the web. They've been doing all these things. As long as they've had these devices, they're going to go into the workforce, assuming they can still do all those same things.
Yeah, they're coming into the workforce. I was joking this morning in the keynote that, my family is that family that when you're in the security line at the airport, you do not want to be behind my family. Because, with our 5 children, we literally have a carry-on that's full of laptops. All the kids have got their own phones. And there was one time when I kid you not, I left that bag on a plane and lost it. That was one expensive mistake.
Oh, wow.
But, the reality is, all of us, but especially the people who are just entering the workforce right now, we're just accustomed to being on all the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's with my phone, whether it's with a Slate device, there's no place where I can't get in contact with anybody I need to contact. There's no place I can't get my job done. There's no place I can't get information.
Right.
And they're demanding IT to deliver that. And they're demanding IT to deliver that to them, give them access to corporate resources, to corporate applications, just not on a PC, and just not on their corporate PC, but on any device that these users want to bring in.
Yeah.
It's a challenge, right? It's just not something that IT has been accustomed to doing. So IT has got to figure out, and I think a big part of my team's responsibilities is to deliver the tools that allow them to embrace consumerization of IT and allows them to embrace those concepts and empower the users to use whatever device they want to do.
Yeah.
And so what we talked about this morning in the keynote was the investments we've been making literally for several years now inside a System Center Configuration Manager 2012 and announced the fact that Beta 2 is available today.
Right.
And that really becomes that central point, that's called a rallying point, if you will, where all the assets from across Microsoft and our partners like Citrix come together to truly enable organizations to embrace consumerization of IT. And it gives that consistent experience for the administrator and a consistent experience for the end user.
Yeah. So I love, the phone story looks great. We're supporting a lot of the key stuff that's out there and managing those devices or allowing them to get access to corporate resources.
Yeah, and that actually is the number one question I get from senior leaders at companies is, when are you going to extend System Center to manage these non-Windows devices that I see coming in? So we announced this morning support for iPhone, iPad, Symbian, Android, in addition to Windows, obviously. A consistent interface inside a config manager to manage all those.
So, you mentioned people bringing in their own PCs as well. I go to my parents' house a couple of times a year, and and the question is always, the PC's running really slow again. Can you fix it?
You're from Microsoft, or you work at Microsoft.
Right. Clearly, you can. So you spend a lot of time, and and they're not out downloading pirated software and things. They're not visiting malicious sites, but the machine still gets a lot of cruft on it. As an IT guy, I would be terrified of letting a machine like that onto my corporate network.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit more about how we're enabling that scenario where people want to work from home. How do we deliver that?
Yeah, I think the most common scenario that we'll see there is, to enable users to use these non-corporate devices. I think the most common scenarios that you'll see used there are either VDI or the traditional thin client services, like remote desktop services from Microsoft or XenApp from Citrix. I think those are the most common solutions that we'll see there, and they actually make a lot of sense because it gives the user a full fidelity experience. It's a great experience. All of us running in the data center, so you don't have to worry about what the state of the actual device is. The users get their job done, can work wherever they want to on whatever device, and IT is able to maintain a level of control and a level of sanity. I do think that one interesting thing that I see quite often is, I think many organizations kind of confuse where they should use VDI and where they should use a traditional solution like XenApp. and VDI is not the kind of the end all for everything. There's a lot of cases where you're just giving access to one application or two applications, and it makes a lot more sense to use XenApp because you get a far greater density, if you will, so the costs are a lot lower. So just be one of those pieces as kind of a reminder. Make sure you're using the right solution given the scenario that you have.
Yeah, very cool. The other thing I just wanted to touch on, you mentioned Intune, RTM today. There's a great demo in the keynote, and you kind of wrapped up talking about, we're at the speed of the cloud now, which means that we can enable new features in Intune, and it's not this concept of wait for the next major release of the software. We can do this incremental stuff.
Yeah, it's huge. I think it was interesting. I was reflecting on this. You and I actually were talking right before we started this. 2 years ago when we announced Windows Intune, literally it seemed like you could hear a pin drop in the room. There were 4,000 people in this room when we announced that. And I think like the public cloud and the private cloud, software as a service offerings can kind of put a little bit of angst into the hearts, if you will, of IT. And I think the message that I really tried to work hard on this morning is Windows Intune moves the infrastructure, if you will, from your data centers or your customers' data centers into Microsoft's, but there still requires expertise in how you manage a desktop.
Sure.
How you deploy software in the future, how you do OS deployment, what patches are you going to approve. So there's still value that IT and resellers and partners can add there. But I think the most interesting thing about something like Windows Intune is instead of having to wait until you can have the time to deploy a new infrastructure, the day that we release new capabilities in Windows Intune is the day you can start to take advantage of them. Yeah, I just think it's a remarkable type of thing. And as I project out 5 or 10 years, this is going to be the place where you're going to see most desktops being managed is from the cloud. So let's jump on this, let's embrace this, and let's figure out how as an industry we move more of that work up into the cloud.
Very cool. Any other advice you have for IT pros before we wrap up today?
Buy lots of System Center. No, it's what I encourage you to do is look at what we have from a private cloud offering. I think we've got the most comprehensive, the most complete, and the offering that really focuses everything we do on the application. Give us a shot, give us a try at that. And then in terms of the desktop, we are the solution that most people are already using to manage their desktops. Go kick the tires of Windows Intune. It's interesting, when we came off stage, it had only been 2-3 hours since the site had gone live. We already had 500 customers who had signed up for Windows Intune. Wow. So it is going to be a remarkable to watch how fast that's going to gain steam and gain momentum in the market.
Great. Well, again, congrats on a great conference.
Thank you.
Love the energy and the buzz this year, and we'll see you next year back here in Vegas, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, Brad.
All right, bye-bye.